This is my response to the digital divide post for Summer Session 1 2013. I want to begin by saying this is probably one of the better ones I've seen as far as people describing how the digital divide relates to them personally. That's one of the things to think about going forward when you write the forums. If you have the opportunity to relate this to your own life, do it. If you have the opportunity to relate to a previous course, go for it. Some things that I noticed is I looked at a lot of where you were from. And I think where you're from definitely plays a role in your perception of a digital divide in Indianapolis. Those of you who are more likely to be from suburbs don't really see the digital divide to be apparent, whereas those maybe in an urban area, maybe those who live in a inner city area, definitely can see the digital divide. One of the things is we can relate that to a concept we're going to talk about later in the semester called urban realms. The idea is people pretty much stay in their own areas. And so in many respects, people aren't even aware of the differences we find in the access to computers, internet, and all of that. One of the things that we saw mentioned early on, it was mentioned a few different times, is kind of, well, there's public libraries though. Why can't these people who might be in lower income areas, why can't they overcome the digital divide by going to their public library? And there's definitely, I agree, some problems with that though. If we think about our libraries, they're not open 24 hours a day. And so some of you, like to procrastinate and do an assignment, the 24 hours, overnight, or an all-nighter as they would say, and so you wouldn't be able to do that. And so accessibility, we can think it has time limits. Also, these are not a deal where there's like 150,000 computers sitting just waiting to be used in a public library. Oftentimes, you have to compete with other people for the 4 or 5 computers that might be open. Other things, like I said, I really like this one because there's a lot of creativity. I heard people mentioning things like the forced digital divide. Very good idea, very clever idea how you can kind of think about how this digital divide is almost being forced on us. We have to. So if you don't have a Facebook page, then what's wrong with you? And let's get off Facebook because it's like crack anyhow. But anyway, another one is I like that someone was relating to generational names, how over time we've got the group, the baby boomers, then we have now this new age, Generation X, now we have the digital generation, kind of how we can see how these generational names as far as these population groups relating it to Module 4 also can kind of see in this digital divide. So there's definitely some age characteristics. One of the things I also liked was the student that talked about young nurses versus old nurses and how the older ones a little bit slower to catch up to a lot of the newer touch screens and all of that stuff. That's something I definitely, you're definitely going to see more and more of. So take advantage of that. When you get out there, you young students, when you get out there to hit the job force and looking for a job, take advantage of the fact that you've got these technological skills that maybe others don't, that you might be competing for that job. Other things, we've got the geographic variances. I think there was a student, Stephen Reynolds, I believe, who talked about the variations in near Northside Indy, where the digital divide can be found. Well, guess what? Later in this semester, we're going to talk about the reasons for those differences we would find in different groups living in different areas of the city. We'll come back and talk about that when we look at land use patterns in the United States. Anything else I want to talk about? Oh yeah, there's some of you who mentioned, well, I looked up the term digital divide online and this is what I found. You shouldn't have had to look it up. It was discussed in the vodcast. And so one of the things is in the forums, I take a close look at what's going on here. And so if you're just kind of copying things and finding stuff from the internet, I will definitely find it. So there's absolutely no reason at all to define digital divide from a source from the. We've already discussed it in the vodcast. Other things is, I didn't notice it as much in this forum, but over kind of once we get closer to the due date, kind of people get sloppy, people get really short. Now, not always, but that's something to also I keep in mind, because it's definitely harder to be the first one to write something than the last one. The last one you can say, oh yeah, what she said. So those last people, when you're one of the procrastinators, you're going to have to give me more. You're going to have to try a little bit harder than what I might have seen in this first post. That's all I got. Good stuff. Thank you.